Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around, we finished off The Seeds of Doom. What was that one about?
Remind me, this has been a weird week for me. We closed Cyrano de Bergerac finally. I'm working on another project. Your mom's on stage, so I'm taking care of the dog. So remind me where we were.
Let's see. So, Keeler was infected by the Krynoid.
That's true.
And then he became a giant Krynoid monster.
The plant man, yeah.
Yeah, and then Dr. Chase just went loopy. I think he was eventually possessed by the plants.
Yes.
And then Scorby died because he tried to get out. And then they called in the RAF and they blew up the Krynoid. And that was it.
And isn't that like the third manor that's been blown up in the last season or two?
Yeah, it's happened a lot. I mean, with how much we talk about, they keep going back to these, little places in the English countryside. They are often blown up in some variety. So, I guess there's at least that. But
but finally, we had in fact joked about calling in the RAF at some point. And then when they finally did come in, that's the first time that they've been called up that they've actually been allowed to do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, well, because that's always the Brigadier's solution,
yeah,
is to just call in the RAF to do a strike, but it never works, or they get called off for some reason. So, but this time it actually worked, so that was great. And then where we left off, the Doctor and Sarah Jane thought they were going somewhere, but I think they accidentally ended up in Antarctica again, because I think he pre-programmed it into the TARDIS and he forgot about it. But I don't know if that has anything to do, or if that's just a silly, haha, funny end of the episode.
It strikes me as, just silliness, because Sarah was in her bathing suit bikini. I don't remember what it was, but she was suddenly freezing because, they were in Antarctica.
Yeah, so... but yeah, that's pretty much how the season ended. And we are moving on to Season 14, which will also contain our last rewatch for a little while when we get back to the Deadly Assassin. But that's a little ways from now. Today, we have the Masque of Mandragora.
Or Mandragora.
Or Mandragora. Whichever you...
we'll find out.
Yeah, whichever one you want to say. So, yeah, this is 4 parts, so we'll be doing all 4 today. And this is also the beginning of the season, so if you want to watch the full unedited reaction for some reason, then you can for free. All you have to do is head down in the description or into the pinned comment. There will be a link there, and it's basically just us blankly watching a TV and occasionally saying a stupid joke. However, while we do this, there won't be any footage from the show in the video, because I cannot stress this enough, and some of you need to understand that is illegal. And reactions already sort of walk a fine line with what we can and what we can't do. It depends on the copyright holder and, if they sneeze that morning. So, we definitely can't give you the full episode. We're watching this on BritBox via Amazon Prime Video, so it's pretty simple to get that, and there are obviously other ways that you can get the episode, but you didn't take that from me. So yeah, we're watching it legally. So all you have to do is you hit play on the full-length video, and there will be a nice handy little count-in. And then when that hits 0, you press play on Doctor Who, and it should sync up with a slight margin of error. So you do that, you watch it, you hopefully have a good time, and when you're done with that, you pop back over here for the discussion, because we always do that too. So, yeah. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then let's just go ahead and jump.
I did notice.
Yes.
The thumbnail for Season 14 here appears to be Tom Baker dressed as Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a deerstalker, he's got the hat and the cape and everything, and it's all tweedy, so I don't know if that's something from this season that he's going to be a Sherlock Holmes type character, but I've kind of said that I thought his entire character from the very beginning is much more of a Sherlock Holmes like an investigator rather than the grumpy professor that Hartnell was, or the cosmic hobo, or the MI6 dandy that Pertwee was. So
yeah,
maybe we'll get to see Tom Baker as Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I can't remember if people said that he actually played Sherlock Holmes. It was either him or John Pertwee, I think. So yeah, it's a very curious outfit change. It'll actually be a bit more subdued than his normal outfit. So yeah,
Anyway.
with that, now let's jump into this episode of Doctor Who.
Different font.
I was about to say that too. Why do we notice that?
What's in there?
Boot cupboard. Not very interesting.
Boot cupboard? That's enormous!
I've seen bigger boot cupboards.
Just how big is the
Yeah,
TARDIS?
your mother has a
It's big. Relative dimensions.
closet full of shoes.
That's not an answer.
Yes, it is good. You know, this is the second control room. You know, I can run the TARDIS just as easily from here as I could from the old one.
That Pertwee.
No.
To think of it, this was the old one.
That looks like a shaving mirror.
Yes, it is.
No. Oh, yeah, I forgot they get a new set at some point, so I guess this is it.
The TARDIS actually has the warning on the front.
Oh, yeah, I also heard that it's a new prop for the box. Well, for the actual one, I don't know about this miniature they're using. Oh man, it's Star Trek the Motion Picture. And crystal meth. Well, anyway. Oh! That guy's really concerned with his hay.
Well, you have to make hay while the sun shines, as they say. This has got to be...
Oh no, the hay!
Oh,
Leave a few alive, Captain, to tell the others how insurrection is dealt with.
it's definitely Italian Renaissance, I would think.
Well, it's not England. And it's back in time, so it meets my two criterias of something different.
When Mars comes into conjunction with Saturn in the seventh layer in the House of the Ram, and the moon is full grown, death comes to great ones.
So it is decreed.
I don't believe it.
Many do not believe it. But the decrees of fate will be obeyed. We have no choice.
This guy definitely looks like a Time Lord.
And I want to rule over a land where there is no tyranny, no lies, no blind ignorance and superstition like that old fool preaches about the stars. We make our own lives, Marco, not the stars.
Nevertheless, it is most remarkable. Your father was in good health. To die so suddenly.
Is that
And he did
Tim
predict-
Piggott-Smith again?
Forced landing.
You mean you weren't in control?
Not that time. I didn't touch a thing. Promise.
Oh, it's very pleasant. Nice, warm.
Maybe that's why I stopped using the old control room.
Doctor, there's some fantastic oranges over here.
Helix force fields must have distorted the coordinates.
Yeah, but the old control room didn't look like that, by the way.
No. Did she bite into an orange peel? Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
We've landed on Earth. Sir?
Every time.
Stop.
Anyone else? And every time. Oh no, the thing came too.
Remember your father? He too scoffed. Oh, yes. I remember my father. His death remains a mystery, but of one thing I am certain. It was nothing to do with the stars.
Now, it would seem to me that the Catholic Church would be all over this guy Hieronymus.
Well,
The purity of your sacrifice renders it doubly welcome to the mighty Demnos, god of the twin realms of moontide and solstice.
Sacrifice now, just
Let
a
her be prepared to receive the sacred blade.
yeah, you're right. Where is the Catholic Church? They'd be putting a stop to all of this nonsense
Oh,
and,
yes.
and doing their own nonsense.
Now, hang on a second. Yeah, Tim Pigott-Smith. Gareth Armstrong looks very familiar too, but I don't know from where. Yeah, Tim Pigott-Smith again did a lot of those sword and sandal movies. I think he was in the original Clash of the Titans, and he's done quite a bit other than that. But we've seen him. He's also been in another Doctor Who story.
All right.
Very young man at this point.
Well, yeah. Alrighty, well, that's it's an interesting cliffhanger to leave on. Well, he may be losing his head. I just want at the last second, they just, the guy from my Brain of Morbius just runs in and takes the head. Just tries to revive Morbius again. But he's dead anyway.
Well, of course, first thing to say is the sets and costumes, the BBC specialty, are brilliant.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story. Again, the biggest question is, as you know, history students and history teachers we have, is if this is in Italy, in northern Italy during the late 1400s, and they've already talked about Galileo, who you remember the Catholic Church literally chastised him for daring to say that the sun and the moon moved, didn't move, and it was the earth that was moving around them. Then where's the bishop? Where's the archbishop? Where's even the local priest? Because you've got Hieronymus, who is a soothsayer, and that would be against Catholic teaching. And then you have this cult of Demnos, which I've never heard of, but I'm sure it's some kind of, again, quasi-religious cult sort of thing. And then on top of that, you've got the alien story,
Yeah.
which so far all we've seen is the sparkler. But it's very effective. It fried the peasant, and then it fried the guard at the gate.
Right. So, yeah, it is just sort of strange that... Well, it's also strange, too, that it seems to be, like, two different supernatural things. You've got Hieronymus with his, future sight and everything. But then you also have this cult of Demnos. And it's like, are these two related? Or do they just happen to be happening in this same town where there is no Catholic Church?
Yeah. The thing about Hieronymus, though, is he's beginning to believe his prognosticating, forecasting abilities. But the fact is, he's really more of very much along the line of the Borgias, using poisons and surreptitious assassinations and everything to bring themselves to power.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it fits. Whoever wrote the story, I can't remember what his name was, has really captured this time period very well. I'm interested to see where it goes from here.
Yeah. And this is a good example, not to get like too far off on this, but of a good different location, because it is, I mean, I don't think, maybe they filmed in Italy, but I get this feeling they didn't. But they made it work. It looks different. It's not just like, I guess they disguised the English countryside to look very good.
Didn't have anything, again, that vaguely even looked like British countryside, other than the little swampy bog fen, whatever the guy was gathering his thatch by. But the very narrow little roads out in the forest. The castle there at the end got a lot of ivy on it, which a lot of English manors do. But they had the big tapestries hung down, so they've really done a very good job of disguising the Englishness, the Britishness of whatever this is. And of course the costumes go a long way to that, because at this point in the late 1400s we're looking at Richard III, it'll be Henry VII, then Henry VIII, then Mary, Edward first, and then Mary, and then Elizabeth. Elizabeth, of course, is mid-1500s. So this is roughly that same time of end of the War of the Roses, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. I just remembered, and this is so stupid, and I don't know how I keep bringing this up, but there's a video game. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh video game, and it's called Duelist of the Roses, and it retells, this is the dumbest thing ever, it retells the story of the War of the Roses, except it's Yu-Gi-Oh characters, and you play the Yu-Gi-Oh card game.
Okay.
I can guarantee even Yu-Gi-Oh fans don't understand it, because you have your main character, Henry Yugi Tudor. We don't know what line of cocaine came up with this, but anyway, so that just popped in my head. But I was also thinking, it's also nice that this is a historical episode.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think, did we have any last season? And we had one, at least, because it was, what was it, Pyramids of Mars.
Yeah.
But that, while yes, a historical episode, it's one of those, I feel like it's kind of like if you go back, if you do a historical episode now based on the mid-2000s, I guess, yeah, it is a historical episode. You're not too far back in time, though. It's not that different, Even if you go back to, the 90s, you're kind of well, it's kind of historical, but yeah, and that's, not a problem in that story. It's just something to point out. So, but this is definitely historical, hundreds of years in the past. So,
see, they're not showing the true upper part of that manor or castle, which would have probably looked more English. So keep it down low, add in the tapestries, add the flags and the costumes, and it looks like it's Italian. Yeah, the first thing also on this, they would force him to take off that scarf.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is not a chopping block. This is just remove his head with a sword, and that's not going to go through that scarf or anything else easily.
Well.
Excuse me. I like to look my best on these occasions.
Don't worry, he'll do it for him. Oh. Aha!
Stop him!
He stole another horse.
No bows and arrows, no crossbows.
Huh.
Righteous babes. Expect to see Bill and Ted any moment now.
Huh.
Except they landed in England, I think.
Yeah.
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Excellent.
Execute them.
Bogus.
Yeah, this does not look like English countryside.
Yeah.
Pie Jesu Domini Dona eis requiem.
Man, I miss the Master. Remember when he led a cult?
Yeah.
Are we chasing a phantom? Or a worshipper of Demnos? Those devils know 100 secret ways under the city. A passage? Quick then, let's find the trick. No, I ain't going in there, Giovanni. Not for all the gold in Rome. I know men who've tried. They've never been seen again.
Nice accents.
Yeah.
What it gives you the idea.
Yeah.
I'm not going in there, Giovanni. All them weirdos with ties to Demnos.
Good job.
Helix intelligences don't have a physical existence in the way you know about. They don't need Earth. If they want...
What?
Duke of Milan, Duke of Padua, Doge of Venice, Signora of Florence. Very impressive.
They are the rulers who have accepted Giuliano's invitation and are coming to San Martino.
To celebrate his accession to the dukedom. Arrogant puppy.
Now, there is a tiny principality called San Marino in northern Italy. This guy also looks familiar.
Grow a mustache.
If this is the English countryside, they've done a really good job.
Well, yeah.
I have this theory, you see, that the world is really a sphere.
Oh, go on.
It's not only me. Other scientists are coming to the same conclusion, that the world can't possibly be flat because the...
If it was, the cats would have knocked everything off of it.
Yeah. Oh man, that's why there's the ice wall that holds everything in like a bowl.
Demnos will not be cheated of his pleasure, little one.
Alrighty. That's part 2. Well, I'm just slightly confused, and obviously they'll explain it later, but I'm just confused as to what the helix is and what it's doing. Because even the doctor was like, well, it has no, material wants or anything, so why would they try to take over the Earth?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought he seemed to imply that it had been here before. And had been, banished and is now back again. But that, I may be misinterpreting that.
Well, yeah. And this is the 3rd or 4th demon creature to be summoned on Earth. So, excuse me. The other thing, I would love just one time when they do some sort of thing like this, there's this cult where this supernatural but also alien thing is trying to take over the planet, but it's just on some random alien planet. Because that's always the joke, is why is it always on Earth, It's like, why does this never happen to, the Santarans back when they were spiritualistic, way back in their history or something? Yeah. So...
Well, maybe the new Doctor, the 14th Doctor, will address some of that.
Well, yeah, maybe. And it's also interesting that this is a former cult. It was one that should have died out in the 3rd century, they said. You're right. It's too hard to not think where are the Catholics? They are so everywhere.
And
they are so in your face about it.
Yeah.
That it's
because if this is late 1400s, even if it's in the 1490s, you're still 15, 20 years away from Martin Luther and the Reformation. I was going to say Restoration. That's British. So, the Catholic Church is still in charge. They're literally, I don't want to say inquisitors because that's more in Spain, but there would have been very little way that a cult of this kind could have existed without the Catholics knowing about it.
Yeah. That's the plot of the Castlevania show, is that a human woman finds Dracula, he teaches her science and medical stuff, and then she's burned as a witch. And then Dracula tries to kill everybody. So yeah.
Oh, there's a wonderful political cartoon that I saw this week. You know who Liz Cheney is. All right, so Liz Cheney is tied to a chair, and there are all of these elephants who are trying to dunk her into the water. And there's a man standing off the side saying, "Why are you trying to drown Liz Cheney?" And they're saying, "The witch will not stop telling the truth." Haven't seen The Masque yet.
Yeah.
Unless the gathering of all the people is going to be a mask.
Yeah.
But, now I also wonder, are they going to bring Galileo in?
Yeah. Well, we've got a bunch of people coming from all over Italy, so... Jeez. Almost slit his throat.
Coming out of the ground like rats, sire.
Oh, they got sticks.
Back!
Oh no, pointed sticks!
He just got nicked in his arm, he's fine.
'Tis only a flesh wound. I've cut your leg off. No, you haven't.
Spent all your life at books, Doctor. Just save my life.
You should staunch the blood.
Now,
You're
like
the
Jamie,
finest swordsman I ever saw was a captain.
Juliana
of
would make an
Cleopatra's
interesting
bodyguard.
companion.
Well,
Showed me a few points.
just got to get a haircut and it'll all work out.
Then bind her well, so that she may not struggle and cry out. Bring her to my chamber.
You think he has to, like, tuck his beard into his mask?
Could be.
That fox-faced old blowhard, the Doge, will be here within the hour.
Oh, no.
His advanced
The Doge
riders
memes are
carousing
coming.
in the taverns even.
Now, child, whom do you serve?
I serve you.
And
Oh, not again.
Salvatore Ambulando.
What?
It's Latin. The question is solved by walking.
Latin? I don't even speak Italian. Hey, I never thought of that before. How is it I can understand you?
Don't you worry about it. I'll explain it later. Come on.
Why?
The great, I'll explain it later.
No.
It appears he's moving against me. He's forecast my death. My lord, don't be alarmed. He plucks these lies out of the sky. But I want the old spider out of the city tonight.
Banished, sire.
Throw him out, and all his rubbish with him.
I mean, you could kill him.
Might as well.
Yeah, it's like, you don't need to show any mercy here.
Strike him down!
Don't hurt me, sir. I'm your friend, remember? Your best friend. Drop it.
The curse of Demnas on you, soldier!
Put an old for his head.
Ooh.
How did you know I'd been drugged?
Well, I've taken you to some strange places before, and you've never asked how you understood the local language. It's a Time Lord's gift I allow you to share. But tonight, when you asked me how you understood Italian, I realized your mind had been taken over.
Really, that's what tipped you off.
Traitor!
Well, that's a problem. He's turned into a crewmate from Among Us. Jeez. All right.
Well, it's a very good story. I really am enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. I love when there's another sort of dangerous plot line going on, but it really doesn't factor into anything. Mainly everything with the uncle. What's his name? I can never remember it.
You're right. Scroll there. Federico.
That's it. Federico. Yeah, it's always just interesting because, yeah, it's like, oh, we have to deal with this. He's trying to, you know, usurp the Duke and everything and trying to take power for himself and kill them. And it's like, yeah, but that's not really our top priority right now. It's this, alien demon thing that's possessing the guy. So, Hieronymus. So, I'm also wondering if we're actually going to see Da Vinci at some point, or any other important person
That would be
from
fun.
Italy. Yeah. But yeah, honestly, just a very good story. I do like, though, the whole thing with the hypnosis, that it's just, like, he doesn't have to do anything special. Like, because that was the thing with the first Doctor, is, I can't remember which companion got hypnotized. I want to say it was Dodo.
I want to say it was Dodo, too.
Yeah, but he had to go through this whole thing to, unhypnotize her, and it was just, nope, just drop it. Like, he literally just, he unhypnotized Sarah the way we tell our dog to, let go of something he shouldn't have, and it worked. So, it probably worked better for Sarah than it does on our dog, so.
Yes, we sometimes have to spray Darby's face with water.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, he's got to stay out of the trash. So, but anyway, but yeah. So, still very good, very interesting stuff.
Even the special effects. I mean, the fact that they just had that multicolored light instead of, some of the weirdness we've had before, like with giant flappy birds and giant goat men.
Yeah.
When the master tried to summon up the one guy. Yikes.
Well, he's dead.
When Mandragora swallows the moon, that's when they'll strike.
I know, but what does it mean?
Lunar eclipse.
Oh.
I wanted to ask you about the mask tonight. Everything's arranged, but it could still be cancelled if you...
You're going to hold a dance?
Well, only if you don't think it's too dangerous.
Dangerous? My dear Duke, you've got lots of guests to entertain. Of course you must hold a hop. Sarah will love it. Ask her.
Oh, yes, just my scene.
And Giuliano, save me a costume. I love a knees up.
Sarah just happens to know how medieval people danced.
Yeah, well, look, it was taught in British schools in the 70s. You just didn't know that.
You arrogant dolt! How dare you oppose the might of Mandragora?
It's part of a Time Lord's job to insist on justice for all species.
And he actually does it.
Swept aside. Come on, Hieronymus. You can do better than that. Come on, Hieronymus. Mandragora. Help me! Come on.
Is that him?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I thought that was rather clever.
A case of energy squared. It puts Giuliano.
They all just got Obi-Wan'd. Nothing left.
Thank you.
Will you have any more trouble for Mandragora?
No, he won't, but the Earth will. Their constellation will be in position to try again in about 500 years.
500 years, that takes us to just about the end of the 20th century.
That's right. Now, that was an interesting century.
What do you mean, it was?
Come on.
Alrighty. Well, that can easily be another episode in the middle of South England. Unless they go to modern Italy, which would be interesting. Alrighty.
Well, the storyline didn't reach the great crescendo we were hoping for, some huge battle, but it made sense that he essentially zapped them, reversed the polarity as the third Doctor would have said.
Yeah.
And it kept the Mandragora power from coming down. But again, said, hey, they can be back in 500 years, giving Russell T. Davies a chance to bring them back, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming Mandragora has not been back in any of the...
I don't know, but they said, end of the 20th century, so I figured that could just be another episode this season,
Yeah.
So...
But again, the thing that this one has going for it, again, just the outstanding sets, costumes, the actors. Again, BBC does a great job in getting people who literally do not sound modern. They can handle this somewhat stilted dialogue with precision and aplomb. And I just love this. It's one of the reasons, again, that I love doing historical theater. Scarlet Pimpernel, Man for All Seasons, Vivat Regina, all those wonderful old historical things. It's because this is what I grew up on.
Yeah. And yeah, for the most part, 99%, with the only exception being those two guards. But I get what
lower class guards, yeah.
Yeah, but I get what they were going for there. It just seemed a bit strange when they were talking about, wouldn't do that for all the gold in Rome. Would you now? Because you're Italian. I get you. Yeah.
But you remember those two guys are parodied in Pirates of the Caribbean. The two guards who rush everybody rushes past them and they're like, wait, you're not supposed to go in there. Monty Python did it in Holy Grail, the two guards who've been told, wait here and don't let anyone pass unless you're given the pass, and they go for a 5-minute thing about, all right, so we shouldn't stay here unless someone gives us a password. No. Anyway, fun stuff. And that was just a nice little bit thrown in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the constables, hey, what's all this then? And then all, hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
But again, I thoroughly enjoy. Again, not the greatest storyline, but it was consistent all the way through. And again, you know me, I love the historicals, even with the alien presence in it. It was very good.
Yeah. Well, and that's just the thing too, is that I don't get why Doctor Who doesn't do that more often. I mean, with I guess the only exception or the only reason being maybe budget. I mean, you could definitely do a lot more of that nowadays than you could back in the 70s. But yeah, it's like if the whole purpose of this is time travel, that's the first part in the word TARDIS is time, so like you can have all this interesting alien stuff, but throw it back in time, every so often.
But, all right, so they've gone to the Victorian times with, what was that, Evil of the Daleks?
Yeah.
All right. They've gone to the Romans. They've gone to the Greeks during the Trojan War. Gone all the way back to the cavemen. Gone to the French Revolution. Those are all wonderful stories. I mean, and there's even stuff in the 20th century. Again, I mentioned before, you could go back to the Titanic. You can go back to the late 1800s and the eruption of Krakatoa. You tell me that in Modern Who they go to Vesuvius, to Pompeii.
Yeah.
Right? They should be doing more and more and more of that stuff, because the stuff with the aliens, to me, is not as interesting as that.
Yeah. Well, and especially, too, because it does work if you have historical, but there's also aliens there,
It doesn't even have to be aliens. It could just be science fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, and because I understand why they don't do just the pure historicals anymore, where it's just like, oh, we're in the French Revolution. Well, what's the conflict? Well, you're in the French Revolution. Yeah. Try to get out of it, So, like, I can understand why they don't really do that anymore, but, like, here, this worked perfectly well, especially to working in this cult of Demnos, and it's like, well, yes, they worship this higher power, it's just that their higher power is an alien that comes in and he's got his little zappy powers and stuff, so.
But, I mean, stuff like going back to colonial times and Ben Franklin discovering how electricity could be harnessed. The war in South Africa, the Zulu Wars, we saw the partition of India and Pakistan. There's so much in British history and American history and world history that they could go back and do. Go back and meet Hammurabi. Go back and meet Moses or, Joshua, or just there's so many wonderful possibilities. And, we get stuck with, we're going to Peladon and we're going to this planet where there are spiders. And no, give us this.
Yeah, because, I mean, even in, like, modern Doctor Who, it's still a bit sparse when you would get a historical episode. Like, you would get maybe 2 or 3 in a season. And there was also a trend for a while where they kept going back to historical authors. So there was... the first one was Eccleston. He found Charles Dickens. The next season... I'm not going to be able to remember it all, but... David Tennant, he met Shakespeare, he met Agatha Christie in one, and there was another, I'm trying to think if there was another one with Matt Smith, but I can't think of it, but that was an interesting thing. Like, they just kept going back to historical authors, and I find that you could do so many more episodes with just historical people too.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, well, here's a historical episode, but there's nobody that recognizable, and sometimes you don't need it. Like, here, you don't need it, but it would be cool to see Leonardo da Vinci. It would be cool to see Galileo, or something like that.
Copernicus.
Yeah. Or even, like, because the first historical, just 100% historical there ever was Marco Polo. That's an entire episode based on you meet Marco Polo.
Yeah.
And that was a great episode.
One of their best.
Yeah, so... And it's one of those that ought to be animated, but probably won't for various reasons. Not the least bit of which is apparently funding. Apparently they're not getting too much funding anymore. And I also hear that there's some sort of excuse that they don't do too many historical animations because there's too many like sets and locations that they would have to draw. And it's like, well, if you're an animator, you should have that creativity.
Yeah.
Like, all you literally have to... Because I get the feeling it's one of those things, like, they want to make it look 100% like it should have looked. You don't have to do that.
No.
All you have to do is just make it work so that it looks... It looks like an actual episode.
Well, you and I have had the discussion before also of simply getting modern actors to recreate it.
Yeah.
You know? And it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, like you said, but it would give us the idea of what this would have looked like 60 years ago when they first put it on.
Yeah, and that could just be like an interesting sort of... Like, you could throw that between seasons, too. Yeah. Like, between seasons of modern Doctor Who. And, because I've seen people that want, like... They want to bring the 8th Doctor back and have his own show, basically, because he didn't get too much. And one of the concerns some people have is that, well, you don't want Doctor Who competing with itself, basically. You don't want the 8th Doctor competing with the 14th Doctor, and, that'll, cause discourse online. But if... I don't think it's really competing if you have a season of the 14th Doctor and a couple episodes of the 1st Doctor. Like, that's such... It's such a different thing, and you're remaking the episodes anyway.
And it's like, well, Paramount right now, there's like 5 different Star Trek series on. Some of them live action, some of them animated.
Yeah, and none of them are good anyway, so what's the problem?
I haven't seen any of them. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be some audience out there for that, and I think they need to tap into that.
Yeah, so...
Anywho.
But to jump into the notes, the first thing I wrote down is the second control room. The old control room, apparently. So I don't know... Like, I knew this would happen, I kind of forgot about it, but I knew that they tried a different control room out for a while, and it's this sort of wooden one that he has. And it's okay, it's kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me of the 8th Doctor's a little bit, although that was still more keeping within, like, the TARDIS, like, well, here's the console, but then here's all the, like, bookshelves and fireplace and stuff around it. So it's okay. I don't understand the reasoning in the story that it was the old one, and like from what they're implying, like that was the one that he used to use on the show, but it's clearly not.
Yeah.
Because it's always, even though it's been sort of different sets and they keep changing and stuff, it's always been the same sort of look.
Yeah.
So...
And they pulled up the ruffled shirt, which was Pertwee's thing, and Sarah picked up a recorder and played it, which was the second Doctor's.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything of the first Doctor in there.
Yeah. I guess the only thing the first Doctor would have, I guess, the ring or whatever that he wore. But yeah, like, I don't know. I'm not sure, like, why they're implying that is the old TARDIS set when it's clearly not. You could say it's just another TARDIS set, I don't know why the TARDIS has a second control room if he never uses it. So, but it doesn't matter. It's still an interesting...
Theoretically speaking, as a spaceship, because they used to do this on Star Trek, the Enterprise had the saucer and then the regular part of the ship, and there was the main control room in the saucer, but there was also another emergency control room, the battle control room, in the non-saucer part, so that if they needed to separate, they could get the civilians who work on the saucer out of the way and then just go into battle with the other part.
Yeah.
I think they called it the battle bridge.
Yeah, they did that like once or twice on Next Gen, I remember. Yeah. I do remember watching a video where, they call into question, if this is the Enterprise's flagship that's always getting into so much trouble, no civilian should ever be on that ship. Like, I don't know why they made that choice. Like, you didn't need to make it to where it's like, oh, there's civilians and stuff here. So it's just sort of an odd choice. And especially, I mean, mainly just because that thing gets attacked every episode, because that's the point.
Well, it's supposed to be an exploration ship primarily, not a military ship. But it was an exploration ship that was run by people from the Federation who were a quasi-military operation, I guess.
Yeah.
However you want to parse that.
Yeah. But anyway, So yeah. But I mean, it's still an interesting set for this new control room. The only thing it's missing is the column that goes up and down. So it doesn't seem to have that.
Yeah.
Let's see. But yeah, we had the Mandragora and the Helix in the dimension of crystal meth or whatever. so that was interesting, and then leading that into going to Italy, which was pretty cool. And yeah, we had the Duke Giuliano and his uncle Federico, yeah, and Hieronymus. They're all great names at the very least,
and again, all very time period appropriate.
Yeah. So, and yet it is, and I guess it's one of those things. Again, this is not a criticism of the episode. This is just something that we would point out, that there is no presence of the Catholic Church. Honestly, you could make a whole episode on the Catholic Church. So, it would also just be one of those funny things, just because of they're always the Catholic Church going in and suppressing all these things, but you kind of use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well. They're suppressing scientists and like Galileo and stuff, and it's like, yes, but we can use that to beat the space demons. So,
but even I can't remember. May have been Leo the Third. There was when Attila and the Huns invaded Europe from the east. The story goes that the Pope literally went out by himself and stood there. I don't know if it was the Po River somewhere in northern Italy there. And basically told the Huns that if they crossed over into Italy, the wrath of God would come down upon them. And Attila said, well, you know what? I don't believe in your God, but, why take the chance? So he stopped there and actually turned around and didn't necessarily go home, but did not invade Italy ultimately because the Pope, he said, this is a very brave man. He is obviously a man of faith, and I'm not going to mess with his God.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well not take the chance, so...
Yeah. And again, I don't know if that was actually Leo. Leo may have been the one who crowned Charlemagne. So, but anyway, I mean, seriously, the Protestant Reformation, Johannes Gutenberg inventing the printing press. Again, we've already seen Marco Polo, but all of the other explorers. Go with Vasco da Gama or Bartolomeo Diaz or Columbus or Vespucci or Henry Cabot, whose name was actually, I guess he was an Italian, Cabottini. Who was working for the English just as Columbus was an Italian, a Genoan, who was working for the Spanish because the Duke or whatever of Genoa wouldn't give him the money to go on the trip. So there's just so much wonderful stuff that they could be doing.
Well, it's also funny, I think, when Hieronymus is talking about, like, oh yes, we shall rule over all the world, and it's like, you do know the world goes past what most people think, right? Like, there's a lot more world than you might be aware of.
Yes, they if they're in the late 1400s there, we're just now starting to get to, I guess, Bartolomeo Diaz was the first. He got there in the late 1480s, southern tip of Africa. 10 years later, Da Gama finally rounds the Cape of Good Hope and makes his way to India. Columbus, of course, the first trip in 1492, the second one 1493. So we're right at the dawn of the age of exploration there. So yeah, Mandragora coming to Earth and saying, I will take over, not realizing you've got the Chinese, you've got the Indian subcontinent, you've got all of Russia and all the various people there. You've got the well, I guess they're the Persians by now, the Northern Africans, the Central Africans, North and South America. This is way more than I think Mandragora ever had an idea about.
I mean, I guess, this sort of, because I don't understand what Mandragora is. It's just this sort of omnipotent, strange, non-corporeal alien thing. So I guess probably it understands that there is so much, on the Earth. But Hieronymus probably doesn't. No. He's still going off of all the stars and everything. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of the thing, is that there's a lot more here than you really know about,
Yeah.
I mean, even Giuliano was like, oh, I have this theory, and several scientists have this theory, that the Earth is actually a sphere. It's like, do you now? Well, I mean, you're right.
Well,
and don't let the internet tell you otherwise.
I mean, that's one of the things I used to teach in my world history class, is that anyone with even a minimum amount of education in the 1400s knew that the world was round. I mean, we always say it was the Egyptians, but the Greeks who were in Egypt following Alexander the Great had figured it out very quickly. There was this experiment they did with poles at Alexandria and Cyrene, where a pole in the ground at noon in both places showed a different shadow, and the guy, I can't remember his name. It wasn't Pythagoras, but it was one of the Greek scientists said the only way to account for the two different lengths of the shadow is if they are part of an arc. And then he said, if this is part of the arc, and he figured out what number of degrees that was, he said, then we can figure out, just simply add all the degrees up. And sure enough, he came within just 100 miles or so of predicting the circumference of the Earth. So the average person did not have an education. So, the two guards going, "Oh, I'm not going down there. Bunch of demons down there." They wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
But anybody who had any kind of formal education at all would have at least have heard of the theory that the Earth was round by that time.
Yeah, but you don't understand that the government has this way of bending light to trick you, but it's actually flat. The government is capable of that. They can't fix the roads, but they can bend the light. So, and look, even though, you have several, third grade science experiments to prove that the Earth is round, if you go rent a boat, you can go find the ice wall. Because that's how everything stays in. It's this, giant ice bowl, basically.
Well, there's that, apocryphal story that Columbus used to stand on the shore because he was fascinated with geography and with shipping and things like that, and he'd watch the ships sail to the horizon. So theoretically, if the Earth was flat, you should be able to see the ships, even as they got smaller and smaller, you should be able to see them literally forever. But he noticed that after a while, the ships seemed to be sinking, and when the last of the sails disappeared, he said, "How is that possible?" And the story I heard again when I was back in the 6th grade is, one day he was holding an orange or an apple or something, and a moth sat down on it, but then began to crawl, and as it crawled around the curvature of the fruit, he went, "That's it. It has to be round, because I'm watching the ship's sails go around the curve of the Earth, just as I'm watching the moth disappear behind the curve of the fruit." So,
yeah. And when was Isaac Newton when he discovered gravity?
Newton would have been, don't quote me on this, but it would have been probably late 1600s, early 1700s.
Oh, okay. So they're not there yet.
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
no, again, this is very early on. This is Copernicus and Galileo, and Tycho Brahe, and some of the others, who, again, Galileo was imprisoned by the church for daring to try to say that the Earth was round.
Yeah, so I only bring up Isaac Newton and gravity because they also have a theory about that, the flat earthers, is that we are moving ever upwards. That's why things fall. That's why there's gravity. So I don't know. I guess not my only question for them, but one question is, where are we moving through? That's sort of my, if we're in a bowl. If we're in a bowl of ice with and we're just all Lucky Charms in there, and we're moving ever upward, where are we going? Can we ever go down? What is down in, what is space?
One of the greatest memes was somebody from the Flat Earth Society who tweeted out something that basically said, people all around the globe have figured out that the Earth is flat. And then down below it is read that again.
Yeah. And I love the flat earthers, and we'll get off flat earthers in a sec. But I love that there are some flat earthers that are yes, the world is flat. Well, what about the sun and the moon? No, those are spheres. It's well, what makes the Earth so special then? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Wait, that doesn't. I don't know. And I don't. See, this is the great thing about talking about this is nobody's going to argue with us about this in the comments. I mean, with the exception of maybe someone's going to tell us to shut up and talk about the episode. But, yeah, but nobody... And if anybody does argue with us about the Earth being flat, you don't have a lot of legs to stand on when it comes to this argument. So, anywho. But
Where were we?
yeah, but it makes for a very interesting setting, this time period in Italy.
Yes.
So, but yeah, we got Demnos. I always have to pause before I say that because I wanted to say Denmos, and then that just sounds like a city in the middle of Europe. So, but Demnos, and which I guess to an extent this is also just sort of. I mean, it's fairly different, but this is also kind of repeating a bit of Pyramids of Mars, where it's like, oh yes, this ancient deity that was just this sort of, mythological thing, but it's actually real. But it's just, but whereas that one is more of like, well, no, the Egyptian gods, they were actually the Egyptian gods. It's just that they were also aliens, So this is actually Sutekh. He was actually imprisoned by Horus and everything. But this one, it's like, well, they believe in Demnos, and it's like, well, it's really just the Mandragora and their power and stuff. So, but still, it's very interesting. And their whole thing was, I don't fully, because I'm trying to take what the Doctor originally said about it, where it's like, oh, well, why do they need to conquer Earth and stuff like that? It's like they're these non-corporeal beings that they don't really have material desires and stuff, but the whole thing was they wanted to strike down the humans before they became a threat, before they went off into space. That's why it's in the 15th century,
beginning of the dawn of the Age of Reason,
right? And that's fine, of course. We as the audience, and obviously the Doctor and even Sarah Jane, know that the humans do go out there because we've seen the future in various episodes. But it's just sort of an interesting thing that the humans are that much of a threat. Well, and even so that we've never heard of the Mandragora before. That it's like, well, why? I guess maybe that's because the humans do go out to space and they do take down the Mandragora or something. But yeah, it's just sort of a strange, well, okay, why are you targeting... It's also just, why are you targeting humans specifically? There are far more empires out there. The Daleks are out there. You don't see them trying to deal with the Daleks. I want to know what, I want an episode, it's exactly the same as this, but it's the Italian Renaissance on Skaro. And so, I want to see, Daleks in the same sort of, outfits and stuff. and they're trying to figure things out. I mean, I guess what it would more likely be would be the Thals and the Khaleds, back, long before Genesis of the Daleks. But that'd just be funny if it was actually Daleks dressed as Italians. So...
But yeah, that's that even goes back to that we were talking about the homage to 1950s science fiction. The original Day the Earth Stood Still. The alien and his giant robot land on Earth to basically tell people, we are the galactic policemen, and we have just figured out that you've discovered nuclear weapons, and it's not bad that you've done that. The problem is we don't think that you are advanced enough emotionally and psychologically to be able to control yourself. So if you don't clean up your act, we will come back and give you real problems. And I think that's what the idea behind Demnos is, that we have begun to understand that at this point in your history is where you started on this quest to find the ultimate weapons, the ultimate power, and therefore we figured if we can stop it now, we'll prevent that future.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of reminds me, well, kind of two things. The first is Star Trek, because that's the whole thing, is once you achieve warp drive, then for Earth, it was the Vulcans who showed up and was like, hey, and it was like it's the only example of a peaceful first contact in science fiction, where the Vulcans, even though the Vulcans, I don't know how they got along with us, but that they got along, and it's like, oh, you achieve warp drive, hey, we can now teach you these interesting things. But the other part of that with the nuclear weapons was the one good part of Eternals, where it's whichever the Eternal was, who he was the tech guy and stuff, and he basically led humans to advance more quickly and thus create the nuclear bombs. and he's like in Japan after the 2 bombs have dropped, and he's like, oh, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Why did I teach them how to do this? You know, it would have been like hundreds of years before they would do it themselves, but that would be hundreds of years, you know? So,
of course, that goes all the way back to the Greek mythology, where the original Olympians didn't want humans to have fire. And so Prometheus says, but mankind can advance so far if we had the fire. So Prometheus steals it and takes it down to Earth, which of course, begins all sorts of warfare and so Prometheus is, chained to the rock and has his liver ripped out every day by a giant bird as his punishment.
Well, and that's also, that's at least like 5 different stories of Atlantis, and I don't know if that's the main story of Atlantis, but is that they progress so much and then collapse because of it. So it's definitely an interesting story with the Mandragora, especially because with them it's less of a like, oh well, we have to be cautious about this, for the sake of the galaxy. It's like, well, you're a threat to us specifically, so we're gonna take you out. So they take more of a villainous role, but it still kind of works, It kind of makes a little bit more sense than the plants and everything, the crinoid. But the crinoid was just a basic, hostile plant,
Which brings me to my last little critique here. If you're going to call it the Masque of Mandragora, remember I mentioned last week, Mandragora is an actual plant. So it struck me that somewhere in here they were going to, maybe try to have the plants rise up against the humans, but because we had just done the Seeds of Doom, they couldn't do that again. But yeah, the mandrake root, especially, is this root that looked like a human being. I thought that somewhere in here they would bring that up, even if it was to change, what's his name, the Hieronymus, change him into a mandrake of some kind. But not worth complaining about. It's just that's something I would have liked to see based on the use of that title.
Yeah. Well, and just also, it's not a Masque of Mandragora. It's a mask and also Mandragora. Yeah. It's the fact that they also had a mask at the same time. So
in this case, they're using the MASQUE, which is a dance, which is sometimes masked, MASKED. So it's a play on words.
It's a bit of a play on words, but it's also a Doctor Who title where it's like, okay, I don't know how well that fits in, like, and especially too because it's only like in the last episode that they bring up the mask itself. So it's like, I almost wonder, it's like, well, we made this title, we kind of had this idea, and then you got to the last episode, like, oh crap, we have to have a mask in here at some point. So we can't just have it be a play on words for a mask.
And did the Doctor in his disguise show up before the Brethren started killing people at the Mask? I don't remember. Or is he the one that came in and said, "Stop, we'll take the rest of them down to the temple"? Because it seems to me like if he was there, he allowed people to be killed, which is very undoctor-like.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I think he stopped it. I think he came in and said, "That's all. Bring the rest."
Yeah, maybe he just at the last second he swapped out from Hieronymus. Yeah.
We're having a hard time keeping track of all these names.
Hieronymo. That's what you say after you jump off a cliff. So
Geronimo is the Spanish interpretation of the original Italian, which all goes back to Latin.
Geronimo is also the catchphrase of the 11th Doctor. So, anywho, I guess that's pretty much it. I'm looking at some of this stuff. I'm like, well, we kind of covered that and stuff, and it's like, yeah, but we also spent like 20 minutes on flat earthers. so I'm like trying to like balance it, but I don't know.
What's our time?
2 hours and 25 minutes. So
I think we're done.
Yeah, it's probably good enough. So,
what's up next?
Let's see here. Next up is the Hand of Fear.
Okay.
Pretty basic, pretty simple. I assume there will be a hand and people will be afraid of it. So, which means, based on Doctor Who titles, there's not going to be an actual hand and people won't fear it. So, anywho. But yeah, that is basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist for all of my modern Doctor Who reactions if you want to go check those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.